Why does a lightsaber become blue in one Jedi's hands, green in another's, yellow in a third's, and red in the grasp of a Sith? The question seems simple when you first hear it. For decades, audiences watched glowing blades clash across starships, deserts, forests, and throne rooms, often assuming the colors were little more than decoration. Yet buried beneath the ice of ancient worlds and hidden within the deepest traditions of the Jedi Order lies a stranger story. It is a story about living crystals, about the Force itself, and about a mystery that even modern canon has never completely explained. As you settle in tonight and let the sounds of the galaxy drift around you, we will follow those colors back to their source. If you've traveled with these stories before, quietly, note which night you're joining us on. If this is your first journey, simply call it Night 1. Far from the crowded sky lanes of Coruscant, deep beneath a frozen surface where sunlight barely touched the ice, there were caverns filled with a faint, steady glow. The air was cold enough to sting exposed skin. Walls of crystal stretched into darkness, reflecting pale light in 1,000 directions. No engines hummed here. No Senate debates echoed through vast chambers. There was only silence, broken occasionally by the distant song of kyber crystals resonating through stone. This is where our story begins, on Elam, one of the most sacred worlds in Jedi history, a place whose importance would shape events from the final years of the Republic all the way to the rise of the First Order. The first mystery is surprisingly basic. What exactly is a kyber crystal? Canon provides a clear answer in some respects and a frustratingly incomplete one in others. The crystals are naturally connected to the Force. They powered lightsabers for thousands of years and later became central to the construction of superweapons such as the Death Star. During the Clone Wars, around 20 BBY, young Jedi traveled to Ilum to find the crystal destined for them during a rite known as the Gathering. These events were depicted in the Clone Wars, where a group of younglings journeyed through the frozen caves under the guidance of Grandmaster Yoda and the ancient droid Huyang. Yet even after witnessing the process, one question remained. Why did certain crystals choose certain Jedi? The Gathering itself was unlike military training or academic study. A youngling could not simply walk into the caverns and select whichever crystal looked most appealing. The process demanded patience, self-reflection, and trust in the Force. In the Clone Wars, each child faced a personal challenge inside the caves. One confronted fear, another struggled with doubt, another had to learn humility. Only after overcoming that obstacle could the crystal be found. Huyang, who had helped Jedi construct lightsabers for centuries beyond ordinary comprehension, treated the event not as a technical procedure but as a deeply personal encounter between two living things. The ancient droid's presence is one of the most fascinating details in Star Wars canon. Long before the fall of the Republic, long before the Clone Wars, Huyang was already teaching generations of Jedi how to build lightsabers. By the time audiences met him, he claimed to possess records covering thousands of years of lightsaber construction. He knew countless hilt designs, remembered forgotten traditions, and understood the practical mechanics of the weapon better than nearly anyone alive. Yet even Huyang spoke about kyber crystals with a kind of reverence. The implication was subtle but important. A lightsaber was never merely assembled, It was formed through a relationship. Why does this relationship matter so much? The answer lies in how differently the Jedi viewed lightsabers compared to ordinary weapons. A blaster could be manufactured in a factory. A starfighter could be assigned from a military depot. But a lightsaber was deeply personal. The Jedi Order encouraged individual construction, individual maintenance, and individual responsibility. When Obi-Wan Kenobi carried his blue lightsaber into the Battle of Geonosis in 22 BBY, he wielded a weapon connected specifically to him. When Anakin Skywalker modified and rebuilt his own lightsaber during the Clone Wars, he was continuing a tradition that stretched back through generations of Jedi Knights. The weapon reflected its owner, even if canon never fully explains how. Many fans first encountered lightsaber colors through the films and naturally assumed that blue, green, and red functioned like military ranks or classifications. In older Legends continuity, there were periods when role-based explanations became popular. Blue was associated with Jedi Guardians. Green was linked to Jedi Consulars. Yellow often appeared alongside Jedi Sentinels. These ideas became widespread in games, sourcebooks, and fan discussions. Yet modern canon has largely stepped away from such rigid categories. The current stories show tremendous variation. Warriors wield green blades, scholars carry blue ones, temple guards use yellow weapons. The Force appears far less interested in neat organizational charts than fans sometimes are. This leads directly into another puzzle. Canon establishes that kyber crystals begin in a clear, colorless state before bonding with a Force user. The crystal does not start blue or green inside the cave. Something happens during the connection, something changes. Yet no film, series, novel, or reference book has provided a complete scientific explanation. The transformation remains partly mysterious. Lucasfilm has deliberately preserved that mystery, leaving room for interpretation while firmly anchoring the process in the Force itself. The result is one of Star Wars' most elegant unanswered questions. We know the outcome, we know the ritual, we do not fully know the mechanism. Imagine standing inside those caverns on Ilum. Around you, walls of ice glitter faintly in reflected light. Somewhere nearby, another youngling hears the call of a crystal. Somewhere deeper in the darkness, a crystal waits silently for the person it has chosen. The Jedi believed this connection was real. They did not describe it as coincidence or chance. The Force guided both Crystal and Seeker toward one another. That belief shaped centuries of tradition and survived even through the final days of the Republic. It became one of the foundations upon which every lightsaber was built. The tragedy of Elam makes this story even more powerful. During the Age of the Empire, the sacred world gradually disappeared from galactic awareness. Imperial forces harvested vast quantities of kyber crystals. Massive industrial operations scarred the planet's surface. Over time, the world was transformed into something unrecognizable. Decades later, audiences learned the shocking truth. Ilum had become Starkiller Base, the First Order's planet-killing superweapon. The same world where younglings once discovered their first crystals became the site of unimaginable destruction. It was one of the darkest examples of the Empire and its successors corrupting something sacred into something monstrous. That transformation reveals a pattern that appears again and again throughout Star Wars. The Force offers connection. The Sith seek domination. The Jedi entered Elam's caverns to listen. the Empire arrived to extract. One relationship was built on trust, the other on control. The contrast becomes especially important when we eventually reach the story of red lightsabers, because the process that creates them follows the same theme in reverse. For now, though, we remain in the age when young Jedi still traveled to frozen caves and listened for a crystal's call. So the first answer in our search for the meaning of lightsaber colors is not actually a color at all. Before blue, before green, before yellow, or purple or white, there is the crystal itself, clear, silent, waiting. Deep beneath the ice of Elam, where the glow of countless kyber crystals shines through frozen walls, the mystery begins not with what color a lightsaber becomes, but with why a living crystal chooses to change at all. And as the faint hum echoes through the cavern darkness, another question quietly emerges from the shadows. If the crystal responds to the Jedi, what exactly is it seeing inside them? Why do so many of the most famous Jedi in galactic history carry blue lightsabers? When people picture a Jedi Knight, the image that usually appears is a blue blade igniting against darkness. It is the color carried by Obi-Wan Kenobi during the fall of the Republic. It is the color of Anakin Skywalker's weapon during the Clone Wars. It is the blade Luke Skywalker first receives aboard the Millennium Falcon in 0 BBY while traveling from Tatooine toward Alderaan. Yet modern canon never explicitly states that blue represents courage, combat, or any other official trait. The association exists because of the stories themselves, and because generation after generation watched blue lightsabers appear at the center of history. The connection begins long before the Empire. During the final decades of the Galactic Republic, blue lightsabers were common throughout the Jedi Order. Hundreds of Jedi carried them into the First Battle of Geonosis in 22 BBY, the conflict that officially launched the Clone Wars. In the vast Petranaki arena, blue blades flashed among the ranks of Jedi attempting to rescue Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Padme Amidala. When the clone army arrived under the command of Jedi Master Yoda, the battlefield became a sea of blue and green light. The visual impression was unmistakable. For many viewers, blue became the color most closely associated with the Jedi at war. No individual contributed more to that image than Obi-Wan Kenobi. His lightsaber accompanied him through nearly every major crisis of the Republic's final years. He wielded it against Darth Maul during the Naboo crisis in 32 BBY. He carried it aboard the Acclamator assault ships departing Coruscant at the beginning of the Clone Wars. He used it against General Grievous on Utapau in 19 BBY. Even when surrounded by chaos, Obi-Wan's blade remained steady. There is something fitting about that, because if any Jedi embodied patience and discipline, it was Obi-Wan himself. Yet Obi-Wan's blue lightsaber also reveals a complication. If colors directly reflected personality, his blade might seem an odd match. Obi-Wan was not known primarily for aggression. He was a negotiator, a diplomat, and one of the Order's most thoughtful masters. His preferred combat form, Soresu, emphasized defense and endurance rather than overwhelming attack. Again and again, canon quietly undermines simplistic color charts. Blue appears not only in the hands of warriors, but also in the hands of patient guardians. The crystal's choice seems more mysterious than any single label can explain. The story becomes even more fascinating when we turn to Anakin Skywalker. His blue lightsaber may be the most important weapon in the entire saga. Constructed after the loss of his first lightsaber on Geonosis, the weapon accompanied him through nearly every defining moment of his life. It was there during the Battle of Christophsis. It was there when he dueled Count Dooku above Coruscant in 19 BBY. It was there during the liberation of countless worlds throughout the Clone Wars. And it was there on Mustafar when Anakin Skywalker ceased to exist and Darth Vader emerged. If a lightsaber reflects something of its owner, then Anakin's blue blade witnessed extraordinary contradictions. It belonged to a heroic Jedi Knight who repeatedly risked his life to save others. It belonged to a reckless pilot who destroyed a Trade Federation control ship as a child above Naboo. It belonged to a husband, a general, and eventually a Sith Lord. Through all those transformations, the crystal remained blue. That fact alone suggests the relationship between color and identity is far more complex than many fan explanations assume. The color remained constant, even as the man holding it changed dramatically. The weapon's journey did not end on Mustafar. After Obi-Wan defeated Anakin beside the lava rivers, he recovered the fallen lightsaber and kept it hidden for nearly 2 decades. Then, in 0 BBY, aboard the Millennium Falcon, he presented it to Luke Skywalker. "Your father's lightsaber," he explained, offering the weapon across a small table illuminated by soft shipboard lighting. Few moments in Star Wars carry greater symbolic weight. The same blue blade that fought in the Clone Wars now passed to the next generation. Luke's early experiences reinforced the growing association between blue lightsabers and heroism. He trained aboard the Falcon while traveling toward Alderaan. He carried the weapon through the corridors of the Death Star during the rescue of Princess Leia. He ignited it during confrontations with Imperial forces and eventually used it in his duel against Darth Vader on Cloud City in 3 ABY. Audiences following Luke's journey naturally connected the blue blade with courage, hope, and the fight against tyranny. Yet once again, the films never explicitly make that claim. The meaning emerged through experience rather than doctrine. Why does this distinction matter? Because Star Wars often allows symbolism to grow naturally instead of explaining everything directly. The Jedi never gather in a council chamber and announce that blue represents one specific virtue. The Force itself remains resistant to simple categorization. Instead, viewers observe patterns. They notice that many legendary Jedi carried blue blades. They notice that these Jedi frequently stood on the front lines of galactic crises. Over time, those observations become traditions within fandom, even when canon leaves the matter unresolved. Some of the strongest examples appeared during the Clone Wars. Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi became symbols of the Republic's military effort. Their blue lightsabers flashed across battlefields from Ryloth to Umbara, from Christophsis to Coruscant. Republic propaganda celebrated victories led by Jedi generals. Clone troopers marched beside them into combat. To ordinary citizens across the galaxy, the blue blade became one of the most recognizable images of the war itself. Whether the color caused that perception or merely inherited it afterward remains impossible to determine. There is another layer to the mystery. Kyber crystals are described in canon as living things connected to the Force. They respond to emotions, intentions, and relationships. If that is true, then perhaps the color blue is not chosen because someone is a warrior. Perhaps many individuals who feel called toward action, responsibility, and direct engagement with the galaxy simply tend to form similar bonds with their crystals. That interpretation remains speculation, but it fits comfortably within what canon reveals. The crystal does not assign a career, it responds to a person. As the years passed, the blue lightsaber accumulated legends of its own. It became associated with Obi-Wan's resilience, with Anakin's tragic rise and fall, and with Luke's emergence as a hero during the Galactic Civil War. By the time Rey discovered the same weapon decades later among the ruins of Maz Kanata's castle, it carried the weight of generations. A color that began as a mystery within an icy cave had become one of the most recognizable symbols in the galaxy. Yet another question still lingered, waiting quietly beyond the glow of blue. If blue blades accompanied some of the Jedi Order's greatest heroes, why did figures like Yoda, Qui-Gon Jinn, and eventually Luke Skywalker himself choose green instead? Why did Luke Skywalker abandon the blue lightsaber that had belonged to his father and construct a green one instead? Few changes in Star Wars are as visually striking. At the end of The Empire Strikes Back in 3 ABY, Luke loses Anakin Skywalker's blue lightsaber during his duel with Darth Vader in Cloud City. The weapon vanishes into the depths of Bespin. When audiences next see Luke in Return of the Jedi, set in 4 ABY, he arrives at Jabba the Hutt's palace carrying an entirely different weapon. Its blade burns green. Its hilt is his own creation. The transformation feels significant immediately, even before a single word is spoken about it. Luke's appearance at Jabba's palace marks one of the clearest signs that he has matured. Gone is the impatient farm boy from Tatooine who dreamed of joining the rebellion. Gone, too, is the inexperienced apprentice who rushed into danger on Bespin before completing his training. The man entering Jabba's throne room moves with confidence and restraint. He negotiates before he fights. He offers opportunities for surrender. Only when every peaceful option fails does he ignite the green blade concealed within R2-D2. The moment lasts only seconds, yet it announces the arrival of a different Luke Skywalker. Canon never provides a detailed scene showing Luke constructing this lightsaber, but later reference materials and visual guides confirm that he built it himself. Between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, the design even draws inspiration from Obi-Wan Kenobi's weapon. That detail matters. Luke is no longer carrying the legacy of Anakin Skywalker. He is beginning to define his own path. The green blade symbolizes that transition not through official doctrine but through narrative itself. The weapon reflects growth, independence, and a deeper understanding of the Force. This naturally raises another question. Why do so many Jedi associated with wisdom and contemplation also wield green lightsabers? The most famous example is Yoda. For centuries, Yoda served as Grand Master of the Jedi Order. By the time of the Phantom Menace in 32 BBY, he had trained generations of Jedi and become one of the most respected figures in galactic history. Despite his immense knowledge, Yoda was far from a passive philosopher. During the Clone Wars, he fought Count Dooku on Geonosis and later led clone troopers into battle on worlds such as Kashyyyk. Yet his green blade has long been associated with deeper connection to the Force. The same pattern appears with Qui-Gon Jinn. When audiences first met Qui-Gon during the Naboo crisis, he carried a green lightsaber and often seemed slightly out of step with the Jedi Council. He listened closely to the living Force. He trusted intuition where others preferred procedure. On Tatooine, he sensed unusual potential in a young slave named Anakin Skywalker and became convinced that the boy was connected to an ancient prophecy. The council remained skeptical. Qui-Gon persisted. Looking back, it is difficult not to notice how often his choices were guided by spiritual conviction rather than institutional certainty. The connection between green lightsabers and wisdom became stronger after Qui-Gon's death. In canon, Qui-Gon achieved something remarkable. Through years of study and spiritual growth, he discovered a path to preserving consciousness after death. His teachings later reached Yoda and eventually Obi-Wan Kenobi. This breakthrough changed the history of the Jedi forever. Without Qui-Gon's discoveries, the guidance Luke receives from Obi-Wan and Yoda after their deaths might never have been possible. Once again, a green-bladed Jedi stands at the center of one of the Force's deepest mysteries. Yet there is a danger in oversimplifying the pattern. Yoda's green lightsaber does not prevent him from becoming one of the Republic's most formidable warriors. During his duel with Darth Sidious in the Senate chamber in 19 BBY, he displays extraordinary speed and skill. Senate pods crash through the air. Force energy tears across the vast chamber. The fight becomes one of the most dramatic confrontations in galactic history. Nothing about Yoda's combat ability suggests detachment from action. If green represents wisdom, it clearly does not mean weakness. The High Republic era reinforces this complexity. Set centuries before the Skywalker saga, the High Republic introduces numerous Jedi carrying green lightsabers. Some are scholars, some are explorers, others are battlefield commanders confronting threats such as the Nihil. The diversity is striking. Rather than presenting green as a narrow category, canon portrays it as a color appearing across many different personalities and responsibilities. The crystal seems interested in something deeper than job descriptions. Many fans interpret green as reflecting a stronger focus on the Force itself rather than purely martial skill. While modern canon stops short of confirming this idea outright, the theory persists because of recurring patterns. Qui-Gon seeks understanding beyond the Council's conventional wisdom. Yoda becomes one of the Order's greatest spiritual teachers. Luke's green lightsaber emerges during a period when he is learning patience and self-control. The similarities are difficult to ignore. Whether they reveal an actual rule or simply a tendency remains unresolved. There is another fascinating detail hidden within Luke's story. During Return of the Jedi, the green lightsaber accompanies one of the greatest victories ever achieved by a Jedi. Not a military victory, not a triumph of strength, a moral victory. Standing before the Emperor aboard the second Death Star in 4 ABY, Luke ultimately refuses to kill Darth Vader. He casts aside his weapon and declares himself a Jedi like his father before him. The color of the blade becomes almost irrelevant in that moment. What matters is the choice. Perhaps that is the lesson hidden beneath all discussions of blue and green lightsabers. Fans search for neat definitions because definitions are comforting. Blue means this, green means that. Yet Star Wars consistently presents individuals who resist such simple categories. Obi-Wan combines wisdom with martial excellence. Yoda combines contemplation with astonishing combat skill. Luke evolves from reckless youth to patient Jedi without changing who he fundamentally is. The colors reveal something about the journey, but they never tell the entire story. And still, as the years passed after the fall of the Republic, another color became increasingly mysterious. Unlike blue and green, it almost vanished from the galaxy altogether. It appeared in the hands of silent guardians who watched over the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Decades later, it would unexpectedly return in the hands of Rey Skywalker beneath the twin suns of Tatooine. The question waiting ahead is a curious one. Why did one of the rarest lightsaber colors belong to those tasked with protecting the very heart of the Jedi Order? Why did the rare yellow lightsaber belong to the guardians of the Jedi Temple, and why did it reappear decades later in Rey Skywalker's hands at the very end of the Skywalker saga? Few colors in Star Wars provoke more curiosity. Blue and green appear throughout the films, animated series, and novels. Red dominates the ranks of the Sith. Yellow, by contrast, often feels like a forgotten relic from an older age. It appears briefly, disappears for years, and then returns at moments that seem strangely significant. The mystery becomes even deeper when you realize that some of the most important protectors of Jedi tradition carried yellow blades. To understand the color, you first have to travel to Coruscant during the final years of the Republic. Rising above the endless cityscape stood the Jedi Temple, a structure that had served as the center of the Order for centuries. Within its halls trained thousands of Jedi. Council meetings shaped galactic events. Archives preserved knowledge stretching back generations. Yet among the many Jedi who moved through its corridors, there existed a group set apart from the rest. These were the Temple Guards, silent sentinels whose identities were hidden behind masks and robes. The Temple Guard carried distinctive double-bladed yellow lightsabers. Their weapons were unlike the personal lightsabers carried by most Jedi. Individuality was deliberately minimized. Names mattered less than duty. Personal achievements mattered less than service. They stood watch over sacred chambers, protected ancient artifacts, and ensured the security of the Order's most important institution. During the Clone Wars, audiences briefly glimpsed these guardians moving through the temple like living extensions of the building itself. Their yellow blades became symbols of vigilance rather than fame. One of the most memorable appearances of the Temple Guards occurs during Ahsoka Tano's trial near the end of the Clone Wars. Wrongly accused of terrorism and murder, Ahsoka finds herself pursued by the very institution she once trusted. As investigations unfold through the underlevels of Coruscant and the chambers of the Jedi Temple, the masked guards appear repeatedly. Their loyalty is not to individuals. It is to the Order itself. In many ways, they represent the Jedi at their most institutional, calm, disciplined, unwavering. There is a quiet irony hidden in that role. The Temple Guards were dedicated to preserving the Jedi Order, yet they stood watch during its final years without recognizing how close destruction had become. While they protected archives and sacred relics, Darth Sidious sat in the Chancellor's office only a short distance away. While they maintained security within temple walls, The Republic itself was already being manipulated toward collapse. Their yellow lightsabers became symbols not only of guardianship, but also of a certain tragic blindness. The temple remained secure. The galaxy did not. When Order 66 erupted in 19 BBY, the temple guards vanished alongside much of the Jedi Order. Clone troopers of the 501st Legion marched on the temple under Anakin Skywalker's command. Lightsabers ignited within hallways that had stood peacefully for generations. The institution the guards had spent their lives protecting fell in a single night. Afterward, yellow lightsabers became exceedingly rare in canon. The color seemed to fade alongside the Jedi themselves, surviving only in scattered stories and isolated individuals. One of those individuals was Asajj Ventress. Her journey through Star Wars is among the most unusual. Introduced as a dark side assassin serving Count Dooku, she spent years fighting against the Republic and the Jedi. Yet her story did not end there. In the canon novel Dark Disciple, Ventress undergoes profound change. By this point, she is no longer a Sith apprentice, no longer merely a weapon of the Separatists. She begins walking a more complicated path. During this chapter of her life, she carries a yellow lightsaber, adding another intriguing layer to the color's meaning. Ventress complicates every easy interpretation. She is neither Jedi nor Sith. She is shaped by loss, betrayal, survival, and reluctant compassion. If yellow belonged exclusively to Temple Guardians or some official Jedi category, her presence would make little sense. Instead, her story hints at something broader. The color appears around individuals navigating boundaries, preserving pieces of themselves while refusing to fit neatly into established factions. Canon never confirms this interpretation, but the pattern is difficult to overlook. Decades later, yellow returned in one of the most surprising moments of the sequel era. At the end of The Rise of Skywalker in 35 ABY, Rey journeys to Tatooine. The desert stretches endlessly beneath a bright sky. Nearby stand the Moisture Farm ruins where Luke Skywalker's story began. After burying the lightsabers of Luke and Leia in the sand, Rey reveals a new weapon of her own construction. When she ignites it, a golden yellow blade emerges. The moment lasts only seconds, yet it immediately sparked years of discussion among fans. Why yellow? Canon provides no direct explanation. Rey does not comment on the color. No guidebook declares its meaning. Yet context matters. By this point, the Jedi Order of the Republic era is gone. The Sith are defeated. Rey stands alone, carrying lessons from Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa, and generations of Jedi before them. She is not rebuilding the old order exactly as it existed. She is beginning something new. In that sense, the yellow blade feels strangely appropriate. It connects the future to ancient traditions without being trapped by them. Many fans have noted the connection between Rey's weapon and the temple guards. The theory remains speculative, but it carries a certain elegance. The temple guards dedicated themselves to protecting the legacy of the Jedi. Rey inherits that same responsibility after the defeat of Darth Sidious. She becomes the keeper of stories, teachings, and memories that might otherwise vanish into history. Whether intentional or not, the visual echo is powerful. The color that once stood watch over the Jedi Temple now appears in the hands of the person responsible for carrying Jedi knowledge forward. Yet yellow is not the rarest color in canon. There is another blade carried by only one major Jedi that has generated debates for decades. It appeared during the Battle of Geonosis. It flashed through the Clone Wars. It confronted Darth Sidious in the Chancellor's office during the final days of the Republic. Its color sits between blue and red, between calm and danger, and its owner may have understood the darkness better than almost any Jedi alive. The question waiting ahead is one fans still argue about today. Why did Mace Windu wield a purple lightsaber when no other Jedi seemed to carry one at all? Why did Mace Windu carry a purple lightsaber when no other major Jedi in canon is known to wield one? The question has lingered for decades because the answer remains frustratingly incomplete. Purple stands apart immediately. It is neither the familiar blue of Obi-Wan Kenobi nor the green associated with figures such as Yoda and Qui-Gon Jinn. Whenever Mace Windu entered a scene, his weapon was instantly recognizable. In a galaxy filled with thousands of Jedi over centuries of history, that uniqueness demands attention. Yet modern canon has never offered a definitive explanation. Mace Windu occupied a unique position within the Jedi Order long before audiences ever saw his lightsaber ignite. By the time of the Phantom Menace in 32 BBY, he sat on the Jedi High Council as one of its most influential members. He helped oversee decisions that affected the entire Republic. During the Clone Wars, he became a leading military commander responsible for major campaigns across the galaxy. His authority rivaled that of Yoda himself in many respects. If any Jedi represented the institutional power of the Order during its final years, it was Mace Windu. His purple lightsaber first appeared prominently during the First Battle of Geonosis in 22 BBY. As Jedi descended into the Petranaki arena to rescue Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme, Windu confronted Jango Fett directly. The clash was brief but decisive. One clean strike separated the bounty hunter's head from his shoulders. Around them, the arena erupted into chaos as battle droids, Jedi, and Geonosian forces collided. Amid the flashes of blue and green, the purple blade stood out like a bolt of lightning cutting through a storm. From that moment forward, the weapon became inseparable from Windu's image. It accompanied him throughout the Clone Wars as he led clone armies against separatist forces. It was present during campaigns on worlds such as Ryloth and Dantooine. It flashed through the smoke and dust of countless battlefields. Yet despite its unusual appearance, Windu himself rarely drew attention to it. He carried the weapon with the same calm confidence that characterized nearly everything he did. The mystery belonged to the audience, not the Jedi. One of the most persistent fan theories centers on Windu's mastery of Vapad, a rare and dangerous lightsaber combat form. Canon confirms that Vapad existed and that Mace Windu was its greatest practitioner. The style pushed close to the edge of darkness without falling into it. It channeled aggression and intensity while maintaining control, because purple sits, visually, between blue and red. Many fans interpret the color as symbolic of Windu's ability to approach the darkness without being consumed by it. It is an intriguing theory. It is also important to remember that canon has never officially confirmed it. Even so, the theory survives because it feels compatible with Windu's character. Unlike many Jedi, he possessed a clear understanding of how dangerous emotions could be. He spent his life confronting violence directly. He commanded armies during a galactic war. He fought some of the deadliest opponents of his era, including Count Dooku, General Grievous, and Darth Sidious. Yet he never embraced the dark side. If anyone embodied disciplined proximity to danger, it was Mace Windu. The symbolism almost writes itself, even if the official lore stops short of declaring it fact. The most famous appearance of the purple lightsaber comes during the final days of the Republic in 19 BBY. After learning that Chancellor Palpatine is actually Darth Sidious, Windu leads a team of Jedi Masters to arrest him. The confrontation begins inside the Chancellor's office overlooking Coruscant's endless cityscape. Within moments, Sidious kills 3 Jedi Masters in a blur of movement. Only Windu remains standing. What follows becomes one of the most consequential duels in galactic history. Their battle moves from the office chamber to a ledge high above the city. Purple and red blades illuminate rain-soaked darkness. Senate towers stretch endlessly into the night. Sidious unleashes torrents of force lightning, powerful enough to distort his own features. Windu withstands the assault and gains the upper hand. For a brief moment, it appears that the Sith grand plan, centuries in the making, may finally collapse. The entire fate of the galaxy balances on the edge of a single decision. This moment reveals another reason the purple lightsaber resonates so strongly. Windu's greatest test is not martial, it is moral. Standing over Sidious, he concludes that the Sith Lord is too dangerous to remain alive. Anakin Skywalker arrives and pleads for restraint. Windu refuses. The decision sparks the chain of events leading directly to Order 66 and the rise of the Empire. Whether Windu was right or wrong remains a subject of debate among fans. What cannot be debated is the gravity of the choice itself. The color purple acquires additional meaning when viewed through that lens, not because it represents darkness, but because it accompanies one of the Jedi Order's most difficult ethical dilemmas. Windu is not corrupted. He is not secretly evil. He is a devoted servant of the Republic, attempting to stop a Sith Lord who has already manipulated an entire galaxy. Yet his certainty places him on a collision course with Anakin Skywalker. The tragedy lies not in malice but in conviction. Modern canon leaves much of this unresolved. No reference book provides a definitive explanation for why Windu's crystal became purple. No surviving Jedi comments on its significance. The mystery remains intentionally open. In some ways, that uncertainty has helped preserve the blade's power. Fans continue discussing it precisely because no final answer exists. The color remains rare, striking, and forever associated with one of the most formidable Jedi who ever lived. Yet even purple, unusual as it is, belongs to the light side of the Force. Ahead lies a far darker transformation. Blue, green, yellow, and purple all emerge through connection between Jedi and crystal. Red follows a completely different path. It is not discovered. It is imposed. It is not a color chosen through harmony, but through domination. And that raises one of the most unsettling questions in all of Star Wars lore. If Kyber crystals are living things connected to the Force, what exactly happens when a Sith forces one to bleed? If Kyber crystals are living objects attuned to the Force, what does it mean that a Sith must force one to become red? Among all lightsaber colors, none carries a darker story. Blue, green, yellow, and purple emerge through connection. The crystal responds to the individual who discovers it. Red follows an entirely different process. modern canon establishes that Sith do not find naturally red kyber crystals. They create them. The transformation is known as bleeding, and the name alone suggests something painful has occurred. For many years, older legends stories offered different explanations. In the non-canon expanded universe, Sith often used synthetic crystals to power their weapons. Those tales remain influential and historically important, but they are no longer part of current continuity. Modern canon replaced that concept with something far more unsettling. A Sith takes a kyber crystal and overwhelms it through the dark side. Rage, hatred, domination, and suffering are poured into the crystal until it bends under the pressure. The result is the crimson blade associated with the Sith Order. The clearest depiction of this process appears in the canon Darth Vader comic series. After the events of Revenge of the Sith in 19 BBY, Vader receives instructions from Darth Sidious. He is not simply handed a red lightsaber. He must earn one. To do so, he tracks down a surviving Jedi, defeats him in combat, and claims the Jedi's kyber crystal. The crystal is not red when he acquires it. It still carries the natural connection formed with its original owner. Only afterward does Vader begin the process of corruption. The scene is one of the most revealing explorations of Sith philosophy in modern canon. Vader retreats to a remote world and focuses his will upon the crystal. Through the Force, he forces it to submit. The crystal resists, visions appear, memories surface. For a moment, the story even presents a possible future in which Vader rejects the Emperor and seeks redemption. Then the vision collapses. His anger overwhelms everything. The crystal cracks beneath the assault and turns crimson. Notice how different this is from the gathering on Elam. A Jedi enters the process seeking harmony. A Sith enters seeking control. Younglings listened for a crystal's call beneath frozen caverns. Vader compels obedience through pain. The contrast could hardly be sharper. In both cases, a bond is formed, but the nature of that bond reveals the fundamental difference between the Jedi and Sith worldviews. One side cooperates, the other conquers. The color red therefore becomes more than a visual symbol of evil. It represents a relationship built on domination. Every red lightsaber carries evidence of a crystal that has been forcibly altered. The blade itself becomes a scar. Whenever Darth Vader ignites his weapon aboard an Imperial Star Destroyer or within the corridors of a rebel stronghold, the crimson glow reflects not merely power, but corruption. The crystal is still connected to the Force. It has simply been twisted into a different state. This interpretation changes how many famous Sith weapons are viewed. Consider Darth Maul's double-bladed lightsaber during the Naboo crisis in 32 BBY. When the red blades ignite for the first time before Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, audiences immediately understand they are witnessing something dangerous. Years later, modern canon provides deeper context. Those crimson blades are not simply colored weapons. They are physical manifestations of Sith philosophy. Every swing reflects the belief that power comes through domination rather than balance. The same is true of Count Dooku, who becomes Darth Tyrannus after leaving the Jedi Order. Dooku's curved hilt red lightsaber appears elegant, almost aristocratic. He duels Obi-Wan and Anakin on Geonosis. He confronts Yoda beneath the collapsing structures of a separatist hangar. Later he faces Anakin again above Coruscant during the Battle of Coruscant in 19 BBY. Yet beneath the refinement lies the same reality. The red crystal within his weapon has undergone the same violent transformation. The Sith may differ in personality, but their relationship with power remains remarkably consistent. Darth Sidious presents an especially interesting case. Unlike Vader or Dooku, Sidious rarely relies on lightsabers. He prefers manipulation, political control, and overwhelming force abilities. Yet when he does ignite his crimson blade, the symbolism becomes unmistakable. During his duel with Yoda in the Galactic Senate and earlier during his confrontation with Mace Windu, the red weapon serves as a visible declaration of identity. The hidden Chancellor disappears. The Sith Lord stands revealed. The blade announces what words no longer need to explain. There is also a tragic dimension to red lightsabers that often goes unnoticed. Every crystal began elsewhere. Before corruption came connection, before domination came harmony. Somewhere in the past, another path existed. Vader's crystal belonged to a Jedi before it belonged to him. The same possibility extends throughout Sith history. A red lightsaber is not merely a weapon. It is evidence of something broken. The crystal remains alive in a sense, but the relationship sustaining it has become distorted. This brings us to one of the most fascinating questions in modern Star Wars lore. If a crystal can be corrupted, can it be healed? Canon answers that question with a quiet but extraordinary yes. The process is rare. It requires immense effort. Few individuals have ever accomplished it. Yet one former Jedi walked a path unlike any other after the fall of the Republic. She was neither Jedi Knight nor Sith Lord. She rejected both institutions while remaining deeply connected to the Force. And when she encountered corrupted Kyber crystals, something remarkable happened. The answer would produce one of the rarest lightsaber colors in the galaxy. Not blue, not green, not yellow, not even purple. The color that emerged was white, bright as starlight against darkness, and it became inseparable from the story of Ahsoka Tano as she carved her own path through the ruins left behind by the Clone Wars. Why do purified Kyber crystals become white instead of returning to their original color? It is one of the most intriguing mysteries surrounding lightsabers in modern canon. We know how crystals are corrupted. We know how Sith force them to bleed. We even witness the process through Darth Vader's story after the rise of the Empire. Yet when a corrupted crystal is healed, something unexpected happens. The crystal does not become blue, green, yellow, or any other previously known shade. Instead, it becomes white. The only major character associated with this transformation is Ahsoka Tano, and her journey makes the mystery even more compelling. By the end of the Clone Wars, Ahsoka occupied a unique place in the galaxy. She had entered the Jedi Order as the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker. She fought in major campaigns across worlds such as Christophsis, Ryloth, and Mandalore. She survived battles that destroyed entire armies and witnessed the Republic's final descent into authoritarianism. Yet shortly before Order 66, she walked away from the Jedi Order entirely. The decision shocked many around her. It also ensured that when the Republic became the Empire, Ahsoka no longer belonged fully to any institution. The events of Order 66 transformed everything. clone troopers across the galaxy turned on their Jedi commanders. The Jedi Temple fell. Darth Sidious declared the birth of the Galactic Empire. Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader. Amid this catastrophe, Ahsoka survived alongside Captain Rex after escaping the destruction aboard a Republic Venator-class Star Destroyer. The wreckage crashed onto a remote moon. Snow settled across twisted metal. Hundreds of clone helmets marked a silent graveyard. The era of the Jedi had ended. For years afterward, Ahsoka lived in the shadows. The Empire hunted surviving Jedi relentlessly. Imperial Inquisitors traveled from world to world searching for Force-sensitive individuals. Former Jedi were forced into hiding. The galaxy became quieter, darker, and more fearful. During this period, Ahsoka gradually emerged as a resistance operative known by the codename Fulcrum. She coordinated intelligence networks, assisted rebel cells, and worked against Imperial control long before the formal Rebel Alliance gained strength. It is during this chapter of her life that the story of the White Lightsabers begins. Canon novels and reference materials explain that Ahsoka defeated an Imperial Inquisitor and claimed the red kyber crystals from his weapon. These crystals had already been subjected to the Sith process of bleeding. They carried the scars of corruption. Unlike Vader, however, Ahsoka approached them through compassion and balance rather than domination. Through her connection to the Force, she healed the crystals. The result was extraordinary. The red vanished. White emerged. Notice how unusual this is within the broader mythology of Star Wars. The Jedi traditionally seek harmony with crystals. The Sith impose their will upon them. Ahsoka accomplishes something different altogether. She neither claims ownership through domination, nor simply accepts the crystal's damaged state. Instead, she restores it. The process feels almost medicinal, as though the Force itself is allowing an injury to heal. That symbolism becomes especially powerful when viewed against the backdrop of a galaxy recovering from war and betrayal. The white lightsabers first appeared prominently in Star Wars Rebels. When Ahsoka confronts Darth Vader on the ancient Sith world of Malachor, her twin white blades illuminate the darkness like pale stars. The visual contrast is striking. Vader's weapon burns crimson, Ahsoka's glows white. The colors tell a story before either character speaks. One represents corruption maintained through domination. The other represents a wound that has been healed without returning to what it once was. The duel on Malachor remains one of the most emotionally charged confrontations in Star Wars canon. Ahsoka enters the battle knowing that Darth Vader may truly be Anakin Skywalker. Vader enters knowing exactly who stands before him. Ancient Sith. Ruins surround them. Dust drifts through ruined chambers. When Ahsoka damages Vader's mask and briefly sees Anakin's face beneath it, the tragedy of the Clone Wars becomes intensely personal. Her white lightsabers seem especially fitting in that moment. They belong to someone carrying scars without allowing those scars to define her. Years later, the same blades appear in live action. In The Mandalorian, Ahsoka arrives on the forest world of Corvus searching for information about Grand Admiral Thrawn. Her white lightsabers cut through mist and darkness as she confronts Morgan Elsbeth's forces. The imagery immediately distinguishes her from both Jedi and Sith traditions. She is deeply connected to the Force, yet she does not claim the title of Jedi. Her weapons reinforce that identity. They suggest a path existing outside familiar categories. The symbolism continues in the Ahsoka series. By this point, decades have passed since the Clone Wars. Empires have risen and fallen. The Rebel Alliance has achieved victory. Luke Skywalker has begun rebuilding Jedi knowledge. Yet Ahsoka still carries the same white lightsabers. Their color has become inseparable from her character. They represent independence without isolation, wisdom without dogma, and strength without domination. Few visual elements in Star Wars communicate so much with so little explanation. Canon never directly explains why healed crystals become white. The answer remains one of the franchise's most fascinating open questions. Some fans interpret white as the absence of corruption. Others view it as a symbol of balance. Still others suggest it represents freedom from traditional Jedi and Sith identities altogether. All remain theories. What canon confirms is simpler and in some ways more powerful. A healed crystal becomes white. The transformation is real, and Ahsoka stands as living proof that not every wound in the galaxy must remain permanent. Yet even white lightsabers are not the end of the story. In recent years, Star Wars has introduced a growing number of unusual colors that resist easy explanation. Orange blades appeared in the hands of Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati. The High Republic revealed shades rarely seen in the films. New traditions emerged far from the familiar conflict between Jedi and Sith. The question waiting ahead is not what these colors mean, but whether they mean anything at all. Are we discovering hidden philosophies of the Force, or are we finally realizing that the galaxy has always been far more diverse than the old story suggested? Are unusual lightsaber colors revealing hidden philosophies of the Force, or are they simply evidence that the galaxy has always been larger than the stories centered on Jedi and Sith? For many years, audiences experienced Star Wars primarily through the Skywalker saga. The films naturally focused on a relatively small number of Force users. Blue, green, red, and the occasional purple blade dominated the screen. As canon expanded through novels, comics, animated series, and the High Republic era, a broader picture began to emerge. The Force was not becoming more diverse. We were simply seeing more of it. One of the most striking recent examples appears in the Ahsoka series. Baylan Skoll and his apprentice Shin Hati both wield orange lightsabers, colors distinct from traditional Sith red. The difference is immediately noticeable. Their blades possess a warmer amber hue, rather than the deep crimson associated with Darth Vader or Darth Sidious. This visual choice appears deliberate. Baylan is not a Sith Lord. Shin is not a Sith apprentice. Neither claims allegiance to the ancient Sith order, despite using methods and philosophies that sometimes resemble dark side traditions. Baylan himself is one of the most fascinating Force users introduced in modern Star Wars. A survivor of Order 66, he grew up within the Jedi Order before witnessing its destruction. Decades later, he operates in the era of the New Republic, long after the Empire's defeat at Endor in 4 ABY. His worldview differs sharply from both Luke Skywalker's hope and Palpatine's lust for domination. He speaks of cycles repeating throughout galactic history. He questions institutions rather than serving them. His orange blade feels like a visual expression of that independence. The significance of the color remains intentionally unclear. Canon never provides a scene explaining why Baylan's crystal appears orange, No reference book currently defines the shade as belonging to a specific order or philosophy. This uncertainty is important. Star Wars increasingly embraces the idea that Force traditions extend beyond familiar binaries. The galaxy contains witches, mystics, former Jedi, fallen Jedi, and individuals who belong entirely to their own traditions. Orange lightsabers remind viewers that the Force cannot always be reduced to Jedi versus Sith. The High Republic era pushes this idea even further. Set roughly 2 centuries before The Phantom Menace, the High Republic presents the Jedi Order at the height of its influence. During this period, Jedi travel aboard vessels such as the Starlight Beacon and confront threats including the Nihil and the mysterious, nameless creatures. The era introduces a wider variety of lightsaber designs and colors than many viewers had previously encountered. Golds, teals, blues, greens, purples, and other variations appear throughout the stories. The result is a richer and more varied portrait of Jedi culture. What makes the High Republic especially interesting is that these colors rarely receive explicit explanations. Jedi are not sorted into rigid categories according to blade color. Instead, diversity feels natural. Different individuals form different bonds with their crystals. Different traditions develop over centuries. The visual variety reinforces the sense that the Jedi Order once possessed enormous depth before the devastation of the Clone Wars reduced it to a handful of survivors. In a subtle way, the many colors help communicate the scale of what was lost. There are also colors that exist at the edge of canon visibility. Certain reference books, visual dictionaries, and illustrated materials depict blades with shades that fall somewhere between familiar categories. Cyan, indigo, and other unusual tones occasionally appear. These colors often receive little narrative attention, yet their existence serves an important purpose. They remind us that the Force does not operate according to a limited paint palette established by the films. The galaxy contains countless stories beyond those directly shown on screen. This expansion of color diversity has also affected fan discussions. In earlier decades, fans often searched for precise systems explaining every lightsaber shade. Modern canon increasingly resists that impulse. Rather than providing definitive charts, it presents a living galaxy full of exceptions. Baylan Skoll's orange blade does not come with an official philosophical handbook. High Republic Jedi do not stop to explain every variation. The mystery remains intact. That mystery encourages curiosity rather than categorization. There is something fitting about this approach. The Force itself has always resisted complete understanding. Even Yoda, after centuries of study, speaks about the Force with humility. Luke Skywalker spends years seeking lost knowledge after the Galactic Civil War. Ancient Jedi archives contain unanswered questions. Sith holocrons conceal secrets that remain dangerous generations later. Against that backdrop, a few unexplained lightsaber colors feel entirely appropriate. The unknown remains part of the story. Yet among all unusual lightsabers, one stands above the rest. It is not orange, white, or purple. It is not even truly a conventional lightsaber at all. Its blade is black at the center, surrounded by a glowing white edge. It was forged by a Mandalorian who became a Jedi. It shaped wars, united clans, toppled rulers, and inspired legends. For centuries, possession of this weapon carried political significance far beyond anything associated with ordinary lightsaber colors. The next mystery waiting for us is therefore not about a shade of light, but about a weapon unlike any other in galactic history. Why did Tara Vizsla create a blade that behaved differently from every lightsaber before or after it? And why did that single weapon become one of the most important symbols the Mandalorians ever possessed? Why did one Jedi create a weapon unlike any other lightsaber in the galaxy? The Darksaber occupies a category entirely by itself. Its blade is not blue, green, yellow, purple, red, white, or orange. Instead, it appears black at its center, edged with brilliant white light. Its hum sounds different. Its shape differs from traditional lightsabers. Even its behavior seems unusual. Across centuries of galactic history, no other weapon has inspired the same combination of political authority, cultural identity, and myth. The story begins with Tara Vizsla, one of the most important figures in Mandalorian history. Canon identifies him as the first Mandalorian ever inducted into the Jedi Order. The exact details of his life remain limited, but his significance is undeniable. At some point during his Jedi career, Tari forged the Darksaber. After his death, the weapon was preserved within the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. There it remained until members of House Vizsla reclaimed it. From that moment onward, the blade ceased being merely a Jedi artifact and became something far larger. Among Mandalorians, the Darksaber evolved into a symbol of leadership. Possession of the weapon came to represent legitimacy and authority. Clans rallied behind those who wielded it successfully. Rivals challenged its owners in combat. Political movements rose and fell around its presence. Unlike most lightsabers, which reflected personal journeys, the Darksaber became tied to the destiny of an entire people. It carried expectations far heavier than any ordinary weapon could bear. The Clone Wars provide some of the most dramatic examples of this transformation. During the conflict, the Darksaber came into the possession of Pre Vizsla, leader of the militant Death Watch faction. On the surface of Mandalore, political tensions were already threatening the stability of Duchess Satine Kryze's government. Death Watch sought a return to older warrior traditions. The Darksaber became both a weapon and a banner beneath which supporters gathered. Its black blade flashed through battles that shaped Mandalore's future. Then came one of the most extraordinary duels in Star Wars history. Darth Maul, having survived his apparent death on Naboo, challenged Pre Vizsla for leadership. Their confrontation unfolded before Mandalorian witnesses. The outcome was decisive. Maul defeated Vizsla and claimed the Darksaber for himself. The moment was startling because Maul was not Mandalorian, yet according to the traditions recognized by many clans, he had won the right to possess the weapon. Once again, the Darksaber demonstrated that it operated according to rules distinct from ordinary lightsabers. The blade's journey continued through Star Wars Rebels. Years after the rise of the Empire, Sabine Wren discovered the Darksaber on Dathomir. At first, she viewed it primarily as a tool. Over time, she came to understand its symbolic importance. Training under Kanan Jarrus and receiving guidance from Fen Rao, Sabine learned that wielding the Darksaber required more than physical skill. The weapon seemed to respond to the emotional state of its owner. The more conflict she carried within herself, the heavier it felt. This is one of the most fascinating aspects of the Darksaber in modern canon. characters repeatedly describe the blade as behaving differently from standard lightsabers. During training exercises, Kanan explains that the weapon channels energy in unusual ways. Sabine experiences resistance when her emotions are unsettled. Later users report similar sensations. The implication is not that the Darksaber is magical in a completely separate sense from other lightsabers. Rather, it appears exceptionally responsive to the inner state of the wielder. The theme continues during the era of the New Republic. In The Mandalorian, Din Djarin unexpectedly wins the Darksaber from Moff Gideon aboard Gideon's Imperial cruiser. Almost immediately, he encounters difficulties using it. The weapon feels heavy. Movements become awkward. Combat requires increasing effort. These struggles mirror Sabine's earlier experiences. The Darksaber appears to demand a degree of unity between intention, identity, and action. When those elements are misaligned, the blade becomes more difficult to control. Bo-Katan Kryze's relationship with the weapon adds another layer. Few characters are more deeply connected to Mandalorian history. She witnessed the Clone Wars, the rise of the Empire, the Great Purge, and the scattering of her people. Throughout those years, the Darksaber repeatedly appeared as both a solution and a source of conflict. Its symbolism inspired unity. It also inspired division. Entire political crises emerged around questions of who possessed the right to wield it. This raises a deeper question. Did the Darksaber shape Mandalorian history because of its unique design, or because generations chose to believe in its importance? Canon deliberately leaves room for both interpretations. The weapon is undeniably unusual. It also derives power from collective belief. Thousands of Mandalorians treat it as a sacred symbol. Leaders rise through it. Armies rally behind it. Legends accumulate around it. In many ways, the Darksaber demonstrates that symbols can become as influential as armies. The blade's final fate is surprisingly poignant. During the events surrounding the liberation of Mandalore, the Darksaber is crushed and destroyed amid the conflict with Moff Gideon. After centuries of survival through wars, civil wars, imperial occupation, and political upheaval, the weapon finally comes to an end. Yet its destruction does not erase what it represented. Mandalore survives. Its people endure. The symbol disappears, but the culture remains. There is a quiet wisdom in that conclusion. And that brings us to the final mystery hidden beneath every discussion of lightsaber colors. After examining blue, green, yellow, purple, red, white, orange, and even the unique black blade of the Darksaber, one question remains unresolved. Have fans spent decades searching for fixed meanings because lightsaber colors truly possess them? Or because the Force itself resists every attempt to be reduced to simple definitions? What makes the story of lightsaber colors so enduring is that in the end, it is not really a story about colors at all. Blue, green, yellow, purple, red, white, orange, and black appear different to the eye, yet every blade begins with the same quiet source. Deep beneath the ice of Elam, a crystal waits in darkness. It does not know whether it will someday belong to a Jedi Master, a frightened apprentice, a Sith Lord, or a wandering survivor of a fallen age. The crystal only responds to the relationship formed around it. That idea sits at the heart of Star Wars itself. The Force offers connection first, and what follows depends upon the choices of those who answer its call. When you look across the history of the galaxy, the colors begin to resemble chapters in a much larger conversation. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker carried blue lightsabers, yet their lives followed radically different paths. Yoda and Luke Skywalker wielded green blades, yet each faced entirely different tests. Ahsoka's white sabers emerged from healing. Darth Vader's red weapon emerged from corruption. The color never replaced the character. Instead, it reflected something about a moment in a journey. The Force did not erase choice. It illuminated it. That may be why the Sith and Jedi ultimately differ so profoundly, despite drawing upon the same cosmic energy. The Jedi enter the crystal cave seeking harmony. The Sith seek control. One listens, the other commands. One trusts that the Force has a will larger than personal ambition. The other insists that power exists to be seized and bent toward individual desire. When a crystal bleeds, the violence is not merely physical or mystical, it reveals a worldview. The red blade becomes a visible reminder that domination always leaves scars, whether upon a crystal, a person, or an entire galaxy. Yet Star Wars never allows darkness to be the final answer. Again and again, its greatest stories return to restoration. Luke Skywalker throws away his weapon rather than murder his father. Ahsoka heals what others corrupted. Rey chooses to carry forward the Jedi legacy without becoming trapped by the failures of the past. Even the destruction of the Darksaber carries a quiet lesson. Symbols matter, but they are not the same as the people who believe in them. A weapon can be shattered, hope can survive. There is also something comforting in the mysteries that remain unsolved. Canon explains much about Kyber crystals, yet not everything. We still do not know precisely why one crystal becomes blue and another green. We do not know every secret behind the purple blade of Mace Windu. We do not know why healing creates white rather than restoring an earlier color. Those unanswered questions feel appropriate in a galaxy shaped by the Force. Complete certainty belongs to machines and equations. Wonder belongs to living things. And so, after all the wars, all the fallen Jedi, all the emperors and rebels and ancient traditions, you find yourself returning to where the story began. Far beneath the frozen surface of Elam, silent caverns stretch through the darkness. The air is cold, the stone glimmers faintly. Countless Kyber crystals wait among the ice, glowing softly in shades not yet chosen. Somewhere in that stillness, beyond empires and destinies, beyond victory and defeat, a crystal hums its quiet song and waits for someone to listen.